So you would think that having more roosters would mean better hen coverage, which would mean a better hatch rate. But is that really true? So how do you know how many roosters you should have? So it really just depends on the breed of chicken that you have. Layer breeds typically have a ratio of 1 rooster to 15 hens. Meat breeds tend to have a ratio closer to 1 rooster to 12 hens. You would think that having more means that you actually get better coverage, but that's actually not the case. Sometimes if you have too high of a rooster to hen ratio, you're actually going to drop your hatch rates because a distracted rooster is an inefficient rooster. So the less time they spend with the hens, the more time they spend fighting, the more time they spend searching for food because there's not enough resources for everybody, the lower your hatch rate is actually going to get. So the best way to keep a hatch rate of 95% is to have an adequate amount of rooster, but not too many roosters, and also make sure that your roosters are of a good reproductive age. After the first year of reproduction, the hatch rates actually begin to decrease. By the second year of life, most roosters have actually reached closer to a 50% hatch rate. So you need to make sure that your roosters are young. They're going to be the most fertile their first year of reproduction. Roosters usually become sexually mature around 6 months, and you want to make sure that they're starting to breed somewhere around that mark, around the 6-month mark, and up until maybe around 18 months to 2 years old. They're going to have their highest reproductive rates. And also another note, if you're going to switch out roosters, you want to give 2 weeks between when you introduce the new rooster and get rid of the other one and when you start collecting those eggs. Because that's about how long it's going to take for those new genetics to actually reach all the hens and the old genetics to be gone. So what do you do if you have layers and you know you're supposed to have a 1 rooster to 15 hen ratio? What do you do if you have 20 hens or maybe you have 25? So in that case, it is advised that you get 2 roosters, but you want to make sure that there's plenty of space for all of those chickens to get what they need, because a distracted rooster is an inefficient rooster. You don't want to avoid getting another rooster just because you don't have 15 additional hens, because you may actually get a lower hatch rate out of your eggs, especially the hens that may be at the bottom of the pecking order. You're going to have a much lower hatch rate in those chickens because they're not being adequately covered. And we all know one of the worst things for a flock is to have 2 fighting roosters. So what do we mean by covered? When we say covered, we usually mean that a hen has been mated with, therefore meaning that her eggs will be fertile. If your hens aren't covered, that means they've not been bred, they've not been mated with by the rooster, and in which case you're not going to have fertile eggs at all. And to be inadequately covered would mean that your hens are to some degree fertile. They've been bred some with the rooster, but they're not being bred enough to where their hatch rate is actually at its full potential. Hens also are going to have their best reproductive rates in their first year of production. So hens typically come into sexual maturity around 4 to 5 months. So that first about 15 months is usually going to be your best production out of them as far as hatch rate is concerned. Typically hens, you want to wait a little bit though. Let's say the hen starts laying about 5 months. You actually want to give it 3-4 more months after that before you start collecting her eggs, because they tend to be smaller in the first 2 to 3 months of production for a hen, and they're not going to be viable as hatching eggs. They're going to be too small for the chick to fully develop and grow. So you're going to want to wait until around the 8 to 9 month mark to start collecting those eggs for incubation. But we can make a separate video on how to maximize hatch rates, how to diagnose your issues if you're having low hatch rates, how to get those back up, where most people's issues lay. If you have any questions or anything else you'd like to ask about, please put it in the comments. And if you haven't already, please subscribe.